Welcome to the Economic Report Live. This is Brian here. Glad to have you here visiting and joining me this Wednesday morning already. The hump day, the week's already half over. And guess what? I already had my coffee. So today we're exchanging coffee for some water. I reused my plastic bottles. And I know it's not completely environmentally friendly, but it's moving in the right direction, of course, not just using them and throwing them out once. So I do use these for about a week, then I will, it seems reasonable. And of course, just a reminder that everybody should be drinking plenty of water to keep your system flushed. Of course, a lot of people, once again, get dehydration from not drinking enough water. So I'm just throwing that on out there to you, and just a gentle reminder, drink up, drink some fresh water. It's probably the best thing for you. With that, we have a pretty loaded show here today, and we're talking about a few things here. And of course, the lead video I have deals, all right, you guessed it, with the Russia and U.S. meeting between Putin and Trump that'll be taking place on Friday. I have a long form video out on that already. It just got published about 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here in the United States, but it's a really important video to cover for a couple of reasons here, right? Because with that, we have a tremendous amount of feedback. There's a feedback loop. The media does provide a feedback loop. And of course, the feedback loop is real simple. I mean, seriously, that, hey, you're talking to Putin, there's Trump, hey, where's Zelensky at? And that's a reasonable question, right? I get that. But I want to say that this meeting might be different. And I get the impression that this meeting is going to be about a ton of different things. And one of the topics might be the Ukraine, probably will be the Ukraine, but I would really think that this meeting is probably about things like rare earth minerals. It's about China's rising. It's about North Korea. It's probably going to be about Iran and Israel. Without a doubt, it's going to also be about rare earth minerals. It's going to be about the U.S. dollar. So there's a ton of things here, and then probably the Ukraine as well. Hey, welcome to the Economic Report. You are here with Brian, and we're talking about the Putin and Trump meeting. And of all places, they're holding it in Alaska. Drop a comment below, and I'd love to hear from you and hear what you have to say, answer any questions you may have as well. But a couple things here I do want to remind you that Alaska was sold to the United States, I went back in the 1800s. And so this really is kind of a very, very powerful meeting, because if you go right across the water, you are in Russia. And of course, Russia really, really super close to Alaska. And so I think there's going to be a little bit more here to be said about the proximity of these two locations. And obviously, I'd have to say that Alaska's got to be a pretty darn secure place, right? Like, there's not a ton of people living in Alaska, not in that part of Russia as well, right across the ocean. But of course, inside that, there's a ton of natural resources, which I think is part of the equation there as well. And once again, if you are here, make sure you like, subscribe, drop your comments below, because I'd love to hear from you. And of course, what we're able to do is provide live videos to you on a regular basis. And with that, also long form videos, and of course the shorts will come to your inbox as well. So I just want to remind you that that's part of what subscribing does. And of course, it doesn't cost you a cent, but it does wonders for the channel. So we'll continue here with Russia, because I think is really an important place for us to be. Obviously, they don't have Zelensky in on this meeting, which right on the surface, you want to jump right away and say, where's Zelensky in this meeting? The fact is, they're going to be talking about a whole range of issues, including Ukraine. And if you're a Ukrainian, right away you're saying, well, this must be a meeting that should have Zelensky there. I get the impression this meeting really has a pretty wide range of topics there. And once again, from rare earths, we're talking, I think we buy a ton of uranium, for instance, from the Russians. That's a fact that needs to be discussed because we're going to continue to need uranium from the Russians, right? Uh, there's other things here, of course. There's oil and petroleum and natural gas preserves or reserves that need to be discussed as well. Pipelines to other markets beyond China, beyond North Korea. And of course, once again, there's conversations to be had about, hey, Iran and Israel, Syria, where the Russians used to have a pretty strong foothold, and now it's almost completely gone. Maybe even Afghanistan. So you really don't know what's going on in this meeting. There will be time where these guys talk face to face, of course, and of course there's going to be another portion of the conversation where, let's face it, newspapers and recording equipment will not be permitted because it'll be the face-to-face meetings. Of course, I will assume that Marco Rubio will be there, who's the Secretary of State. I'll also assume that J.D. Vance is there as well. He really seems to be kind of always involved in almost every single one of these conversations in some way, shape, or form, so it's worthy of following. Of course, another story that we're covering today has to deal with Canada. And yesterday, it was Canada making an offer to buy the Hanes Company from the United States. And of course, we're talking about T-shirts, talking about undershirts, talking about undergarments, socks, you name it. So that's the Hanes Company. And kind of interesting that the United States is making conceivably selling this company to a Canadian-controlled country of a company called Gildan. So it also is worth following. A couple of other interesting stories I wanted to make sure that we're talking about today because it really does go back to Canada and U.S. relations, and kind of a crazy thought here, but did you realize that last month was the first month that Canada imported more automobiles from Mexico than they did from the United States? And I want to say it's the first time ever that happened. And I guess that's probably part of the anomaly with trade right now and tariffs right now that they're trying to iron out. But it's really worthy of mentioning for a couple of reasons, because you can see that tariff policy really is impacting the import of automobiles, but there's always more, the devil's always in the details. Another interesting story to follow is that Canada is no longer really buying too much American alcohol, liquor, beer, in part because I think there's an anti-American sentiment up there, or at least a pro-Canadian sentiment there, if that makes any sense. And it's very easy right now for the people that consume alcohol to say no to the United States. That is, they're doing this in almost all regions in Canada, with the exception of Alberta, which is a real oil-heavy region. I think they want to keep up good relations with the United States, so they'll buy all the liquor, and of course, the idea is continuing that oil flow into the United States. So it's just a story that's worth following here as well. With that, a couple of other stories here to follow. Europe is a bit anxious about this Russia meeting, of course, but understanding that there's more of a wide range of factors there involved, just not purely Russian issues, not pure European issues, but of course, a face-to-face with Putin and Trump really does hold a considerable amount of merit. And of course, I think that's part of the reason why Putin's even showing up, because there's a lot of uncertainty in this relationship, and maybe it's a chance to really think things through. And of course, it's kind of crazy that the United States is selling weapons to NATO, and NATO, of course, is taking those weapons and giving them to the Ukrainians. So this is an issue to be like super aware of, and it is really covered well inside the video that I have put together today, the long form video. And once again, if you are liked and subscribed, you are already going to receive that notification at some point in time right to your inbox. There will be a short released in the not too distant future about that as well. It's going to be, I think, something that helps kind of move the ball along and maybe cut down, once again, on DC politics and, of course, Wall Street economics, and maybe bringing the story down to Main Street, because I think that matters and matters a ton. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of simple things here to follow up on. We've talked Russia, we've talked the United States, we've mentioned Europe, we've talked about Canada for sure. The last thing we're going to take a quick look at is the gold and crypto prices, something that's worthy of following here. We'll take a quick look at precious metals and the cryptos and see how they are performing today. Of course, yesterday, if you remember, we were talking about how a couple of these things are trading specifically. We were taking a look at Bitcoin that was making another move up to about, goodness sakes, about $119,000 per coin. We can go ahead and catch the price right now and update. Wow, $122,000 per Bitcoin right now. That is crazy. So it's really blowing through that support number of 120,000 and pushing on to 122 per coin. Like just last week, it was 114. So, you know, a person who was holding a coin that was going to take that risk, of course, now is at a point where they're getting a pretty significant reward. Like we're talking about roughly a 4 to 5% increase from just like last week alone. We'll go ahead and check on a couple more of these. We've been checking Ethereum on a regular basis because it also is a pretty widely traded coin, up $92 today. Which takes them to $4,682 as well. So that's roughly a 2% increase. And of course, the third and final one that we follow, in part because of, well, to be honest with you, because of me, we're going to go ahead and get a quote on Solana, SOL, and that is the SOL price, we'll call this. And it's currently trading at, yesterday it was 177. Holy cow, it bumped up to 201 today. So that's a pretty significant run here. And if we're to take a look at Solana, which I will for the last year, it's not at its high, but I'm just saying that it's out there. It's approaching its high. It's off by about 20, 25 bucks from its all-time high. So I will throw those out there to you. Of course, quick roundup here. We'll go ahead and go to Kitco, do a quick pivot and check on gold prices from Kitco. And the gold chart is putting gold at, oh, holy cow. Pretty big jump today, up about 20 bucks per ounce. So we're talking $3,367 per ounce right now. Last thing we will do is take a look at silver. And once again, always referred to as poor man's gold. And by the way, as I've mentioned before in some of our previous live episodes, silver, there are some coins still in circulation, so it's worth following. Occasionally, you get, if and when you get change back, like if anybody uses cash anymore, you can always check out your coinage and look for anything that's from 1964 on back. The silver coins, those do hold a value, and we're talking about a melt value slash collector's value, but we're talking up about 62 cents today. So riding at $38.47 per ounce. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, just a couple of things here as we start wrapping up the economic report today. This cast will start taking place in the afternoons, in part because the summer schedule is going to be ending, and we're looking for a time where people are going to be back to a more regular schedules. And of course, we find that there's going to be a ton of viewers, at least according to the statistics. We're looking at statistics that say about 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock is when most of my viewers will be watching this. And so I will go ahead and put this on during the regular hours. About 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, we're going to experiment a little bit with the time period. But remember, if you like and subscribe to once again, you will get this sent right to your inbox again. Folks, a couple things here I want to remind you of, that the biggest battle we're fighting every single day is the one between our ears, over our thoughts, our ideas, and our actions. And of course, mental clarity really does matter a ton. And if there's one thing you do when you go out, smile, say hi to people. It doesn't cost you a cent, and it does a lot for everyone else, and it makes the world a little bit of a better place because that's your personal touch. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me at the Economic Report Live, and I will go ahead and look forward to seeing you next episode. Have a great day, and don't forget to be awesome.